Right now, a new round of purging of the state's voter rolls is underway. We'll talk with one group who says the process is out of balance. Also find out how scammers are using AI and stolen identities to drain millions in FAFSA aid. And intense security will be in place for tonight's All-Star game at Truist Park. We'll examine what goes into keeping those high-profile events safe and secure. This is The Take. Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm Cheryl Preheim, filling in for my friend Chesley McNeil. This is The Take. We go beyond the headlines, look at why and how stories are impacting your community. Experts will share what they know, and we'll have a little bit of fun too. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is now preparing for his largest purge of names off the state's voter rolls. In all, more than 477,000 voters are being targeted. Officially, they're referred to as inactive. This is based on not voting in both the 2022 and the 2024 general election. The Secretary of State's office says that it sent notices out, and those voters now have 40 days to respond. In a statement sent out Thursday, Secretary Raffensperger says Georgia's voter rolls are the cleanest in the nation thanks to the diligent partnerships we've made to secure our elections. Clean voter rolls mean clean elections. My promise to Georgia voters is elections that are free, fair, and fast, and we're doing just that. While the Secretary of State says this move is to improve election integrity, it's also raising concerns about who may be silenced unintentionally or perhaps intentionally. Joining us now is Lauren Grow-Wargo. She's the CEO of Fair Fight Action and former campaign manager for Stacey Abrams' 2018 run for governor. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Cheryl. Great to be here.
So what concerns you most about the process that's going on in our state now?
This is a very historic time. We are seeing an unprecedented number of voters being moved to a cancellation process, about 6% of the voter rolls, 500,000 Georgians. Unfortunately, this appears to be a political play by our Secretary of State as part of the national kind of MAGA reform on our elections that seems very partisan. We've done a deep analysis of the list. The list is disproportionately partisan Democrats. It's disproportionately Black voters in Georgia. And there are portions of the list, how they seem to have come up with this. We don't have full transparency on the data and how they came up with this. That raise concerns. So let me give you a little bit on that, and I can tell voters what to do, because this week they're going to start to get, as you said in the lead, voters are going to start to get those letters in the mail.
Right.
So what folks need to do, if they get a letter in the mail, they need to immediately return the mail, or they need to contact their county board of elections. Fairfight.com/stopthepurge has information. You can also go to the Georgia Secretary of State page. But here's the deal. As you know, I know you guys have covered this, we have one of the worst postal crises happening in our state. And this has been going on for probably about a year, more than a year at this point. Mm-hmm. And so a portion of this 500,000 list are people who have apparently had returned mail or no contact with the elections infrastructure in Georgia. That is a big problem for me because we have some of the worst mail delivery in the country. I think May of this year, we were ranked the second worst state for postal delivery in the country. Mm-hmm. Before the postal deliveries, unreturned mail was already viewed as not a reliable way to remove voters. So we're seeing voters potentially punished for not having mail returned. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Cheryl, but I get a ton of mail, a ton of junk mail. I am not looking at all my mail. I'm not responding to all my mail.
Sure,
I know that with the postal issues, I've had a whole bunch of mail issues. So a good 100,000 or so of these voters may be caught in a mail issue, very much Georgia residents. We don't know.
And on that point,
and there's all these data issues going on, so voters need to really watch out for their mail now and contact their county.
Sure, that's an important point because as you're talking, I'm thinking about the people most at risk for falling through the cracks. As you said, young minority and mobile voters. Think about maybe students, renters, military families who maybe skip a cycle because they're moving locations, and that a few years can go pretty quickly. Is there a way to purge voter rolls without risking disenfranchising, particularly those groups of people?
To your point of military voters, there's over 2,000 military addresses in this purge we're particularly concerned about, as well as these 200,000 unreturned mail or no contact. But to your point, look, list maintenance is normal. We know that people die in our state. We know that people move in our state. Counties do list maintenance all the time. Counties are kind of in a constant looking at their list maintenance. There are federal rules around this. The National Voter Registration Act prevents purges from happening close to an election. There are federal rules meant to protect our freedom to vote that we think this purge might be in violation of. That said, I don't know yet. There's a lot of analysis still going on. So at the end of the day, yes, there are established list maintenance practices that are not disenfranchising. We think probably a portion of the list is compliant. The issue is 500,000 voters in a time in Georgia where we're seeing historic voter turnout and growth in the state. This is very, very concerning. To your point on mobile voters, young voters, voters who might be taking care of family members, voters who might not be checking their mail. There's a lot of data issues we see here. So we want voters to be vigilant. Don't be afraid. Go online. Contact your local county. If you live in Fulton County, call up your Fulton County BOE. You can go to verified.com/stopthepurge. You can also Google the Georgia Secretary of State. Get in contact. If you have friends or family who received this letter, return the letter. And obviously, you can always reach out to Verified. You can DM us on social media, and we can get you those resources. We do not want 500,000 voters purged off the rolls.
Being proactive,
us and our allies are really doing a deep look at this list to figure out if there's any advocacy to help shut it down.
Yeah, you mentioned we're talking about 477,000 potential voters in a state where the elections are increasingly smaller and smaller margins. You mentioned that you felt like it feels partisan, and this is a part of our government that's not supposed to be that way. We've heard a lot about election integrity, particularly after the 2020 election. What impact do you see this process having on next year's midterms?
Look, the Secretary of State and his folks are a very political team. And the way this purge reads, it reads as part of the MAGA national strategy. It reads part of Marjorie Taylor Greene's effort to redraw all the congressional districts to kick out any non-citizens. It reads like the National SAVE Act. There are a series of local, federal, and state initiatives happening right now in this country by the governing majority, that is Republicans, to reshape elections to prioritize Republican-leaning voters. Unfortunately, that appears to be part of the Secretary of State's mission coming up into a very big race next year. We have open constitutional offices, an open governor's race. We understand Brad Raffensperger, our Secretary of State, isn't going to run again, is looking to run for higher office. Folks in his office, there's speculation that folks in his office might be running for higher office. And so you cannot take the politics out of this moment. To your point on quote unquote election integrity, this language around clean voter rolls dates back to Jim Crow on who belongs and who doesn't belong. Look, there is valid ways to do list maintenance. People die, people move, yes. What we're talking about, we have never seen a voter purge this big. There's never been even any sort of attempt. Going back years, we've been purging. Georgia has been purging hundreds of thousands of voters every cycle.
Yeah,
we've had historically high voter turnout. It doesn't make sense that we're at a point that you would need to purge 500,000 voters. You cannot take it out of the political context.
Lauren, this has been an issue that's been
local initiatives.
Sure, an issue that will continue to be a big point of conversation. Appreciate the time. Thanks, Lauren Growargo, and we'll keep following it for you. You betcha. We are following it here on The Take, and we'll have more for you when we come back. 50 days or else. That's the warning from President Trump to Russian President Putin to end the war in Ukraine. Joining us now from in Washington, NBC correspondent Alice Barr. Good to have you on the show here, Alice.
Good morning, Cheryl.
After touting his good relationship with Putin, the president now says he's pretty unhappy with the Russian leader. What do you feel is behind that about face?
Yeah, it's been kind of remarkable to see President Trump's changing rhetoric here. For a long time, he has spoken positively about his relationship with President Putin. There's no secret that President Trump thinks of himself as a deal maker, wrote a book on it. And he came into office believing that he was going to be able to turn this around relatively quickly. In fact, he promised that he could end the war in Ukraine in the first 24 hours of his second term. Clearly, it's proven more complicated than that. And so I think President Trump is dealing with a combination of frustration and, he wants to kind of deliver on something that he had promised. He wants to help end this war. He thought that it was going to be easier than it has been, and he is getting frustrated with President Putin. He said yesterday that he thought that he'd reached a deal with him 4 times over the past few months, and then he said we'd have a great conversation during the day and the afternoon, and he said he'd come home and tell the First Lady, I had a lovely conversation with Vladimir Putin, and she'd say, okay, more cities were hit. So then he said, he'll drop bombs at night, and clearly all that nice talk doesn't mean anything. He's been speaking much more frequently about that. And so I think it's really this combination of his wanting to get something done and feeling like he maybe it's starting to make him look bad, that he thought he was going to be able to come through here. And President Putin is proving a lot more slippery than he thought he was going to be.
All right, now that 50-day ultimatum. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court handed the Trump administration another win, allowing mass layoffs at the Department of Education to move forward. We've got a connection here in Georgia to that department. President Jimmy Carter established the Education Department in '79. So how soon could we start seeing the White House move on this?
Yeah, that's right. And this is a strange ruling because it's essentially the pause of a pause. The Supreme Court did hand the Trump administration a win here, allowing these mass layoffs at the Department of Education to move forward, but it's only temporary. They can move forward for now. The federal judge had ruled that the White House needed approval from Congress to effectively dismantle the department, which with the numbers that they're talking about, 1,500 out of some 4,000 workers gone, the argument was that that was basically taking the department apart. But the Supreme Court has now granted an emergency application blocking the lower order. So the lower order was essentially an emergency stay on the firings, and now this is a stay on that stay. All that to say that things are still in motion. So it's not 100% clear how it's going to play out from here. Of course, the legal process will take a little bit of time. So it's a question of, how many layoffs can happen before the ultimate legal questions are actually sorted out.
And the implications that will have on the local level as well. Alice Barr in Washington, always appreciate the time. Thanks a lot. Plenty more in store for you. This is The Take you're watching here on 11Alive Plus. All right, it happens to all of us, right? You're scrolling, you see something you'd like to buy online, and then you just let it sit in the cart. Here to help explain why we do that, why we just let things sit in our online shopping carts, consumer expert Morgan Ward. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, why do we as shoppers make that move to snag something we feel like we need, then we just don't close the deal?
Really, it's for a form of self-control. It's sort of like testing out whether you want something and giving yourself a beat before you actually commit to it. So consumers do it all the time as a way of kind of determining whether they actually want to own.
That makes me laugh because I'm thinking I have things in my cart, but my kids would never let it just sit there. So we have a little more self-control than the young ones around us maybe. So it sounds like retailers, though, are starting to be aware of this. How are they working to flip that impulse into a sale?
Yeah, so the best retailers realize that this is part of the consumption process. They don't kick your stuff out of your cart. So when you go back to it, you have no idea what you actually started out with. And what they're doing is incentivizing consumers. So reminding you with like subtle nudges that you could get 10% off, or maybe something left your cart, but it could be put back in. So kind of helping the consumer finalize the purchase process.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten those notices like time's running out. You better buy it now. But money's tight. Money's tight. Things are expensive right now. We're hearing of some shoppers knowingly buying fakes, especially with luxury items, but it's for a unique purpose in some cases.
Yeah, so people are buying luxury items, but they're allowing themselves to buy things that are fake. So for instance, if you remember the Workin bag craze of last year, it was a Walmart bag that looked like a Birkin and people went nuts for it. And there's lots of other examples as well. So I see people walking around with t-shirts that have purposely misspelled the word Prada, etc. And it's kind of a reference that the consumer understands the desire for having something beautiful, but they don't want to spend their entire salary on being an advertisement for some of these brands. So they're pretty explicit, like this is fake, but
I
the
do
more
that.
you tell people it's fake, the more that you seem authentic.
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking I'm wearing these earrings and someone said, I love your earrings. I said, oh, they're just shiny glass. They're totally fake, you know. How do consumers rationalize buying fakes, though, if they still say that they're craving some kind of authenticity?
Yeah, the authenticity is really the fact that you're revealing that it's fake. You're not pretending that it's real, just like you said. You're telling people, I'm wearing this and you can have access to it too, right? So I'm not sort of like super high status. I just have access to this because it's a price that we can all afford.
Yeah, no doubt. It's why I wear these in the parking lot of the Dollar Tree. All right, speaking of how shoppers behave, it seems like it's all about taking to TikTok to sell your product. Talk about its changing way the folks are searching for products and information there before we go.
Yeah, so people have started adopting TikTok as kind of the new Google, especially in the youngest age group. So, like Generation Z, Generation Alpha, even the youngest millennials. Rather than Googling, they search for products, services, even ideas and entertainment on on TikTok instead of Google because there's so many easier ways to process the information. You get it from influencers, you can see things, you can see before and after. So it's a really rich form of search.
Another way brands are having to rethink how they show up, especially on that platform, I bet.
Yeah, they have to start telling stories about themselves, partnering with influencers, remembering their hashtags. So brands have to be really strategic about this.
All right, Morgan Ward, always so interesting. Appreciate all of your insight in the consumer world that sure is changing dramatically day by day. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You are watching The Take. We'll be right back. Right about now, families are saying, where is the summer going? It's flying by, a busy time for parents as they make plans for back to school. The DeKalb County Board of Health is helping parents get their kids ready for the new year by keeping one of its 4 public health centers a little later each Tuesday. Here to explain the move is Eric Nickens with the DeKalb Public Health. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thanks for having me.
So every year, back to school rush, it hits hard. Every year, we just fall into that routine. Why are these extended hours so critical for families, really everywhere, but you're doing this in DeKalb County right now?
That is correct. It's hard to believe. It seems like just yesterday we ended the school year, and now 2-3 weeks out from the new school year. This is very important because this essentially is like our holiday season, so to speak. So we're encouraging everyone to get in here as soon as they can because we don't want people to wait till the last minute. Just like holiday shopping, you wait till the last minute, there are going to be delays and you don't know what the unexpected may hold. So that's why we have these extended hours starting today at our North DeKalb Health Center, and we'll be rotating them through our other 3 health centers throughout the rest of the month and into the first week of August.
Because the to-do list is pretty long and it can be hard to balance work schedules, family schedules, and getting those appointments. We're talking about immunizations, dental checks, maybe that birth certificate that's needed. What do you see are some of the most common things that families tend to forget until the last minute?
Believe it or not, particularly for those individuals who are moving in to Georgia for the first time, they're not aware of our immunization requirements here and the paperwork that is needed by the schools. So checking that off and getting that taken care of before the school year starts is critical.
You know, I'm thinking about, the summertime is downtime for the kids, but parents, they keep on working. So for a parent walking in maybe after work, what should they expect? What services can they knock out there all in one stop?
So we do provide immunizations as well as school health physicals as well. If you have a child that is playing sports, we do athletic physicals as well. So we're kind of that one-stop shop that everything can be taken care of at the same time. What we do encourage parents and guardians to do is to arrive as early as possible, even though we're open till 7:30 p.m. Everybody else has got the same mindset and will probably have a lobby full, but in time we will get to you and get you taken care of. The key is to pack your patience.
All right, yeah, worth the wait, no doubt. So if it's a grandparent, maybe an auntie, a caregiver parent, if someone who's bringing that child isn't sure about insurance, perhaps they don't have coverage, can they still come in and get help for their child?
They can still come in, most certainly, but be sure to bring the immunization records as well as the type of insurance so we can be able to screen that and run that through. That will definitely expedite the process. Also, we'll need proof of permission to treat the child if it is a grandparent or it is if it's not the parent.
Good, that's a really good point. Before we go, for families perhaps new to Georgia or just new to DeKalb, especially after moving over the summer, how important is it to have that child's full health records and immunization history in hand?
It is very important to have that, particularly if you're moving from another state. There's the mindset that we will be able to tap into our magical computers here at the health centers and be able to pull records up from another state. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So if you're coming in from another state, we strongly encourage you to have those immunization records on hand when you come to the health center. And if you have any questions about what is required for childhood immunizations and preparing for back to school, we encourage you to visit the Georgia Department of Public Health's website as well. That has a full list of what is required, particularly if you have a seventh grader or 11th grader. There are immunization and booster requirements for those
Okay.
grade levels as well.
All right, well, thanks so much for all you're doing to help families be ready for the new year, and hope it's a great school year for you as well. Thanks a lot.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
The extended hours, as we mentioned, start today and will rotate amongst DeKalb Health's 4 public health centers. Today it'll be at North DeKalb Health Center in Chamblee, followed by the Clifton Spring Health Center, and then to the T.O. Vison's Health Center, both in Decatur, finally wrapping up at the East DeKalb Health Center in Lithonia. Each Tuesday night, that clinic will remain open until 7:30. All right, plenty more for you coming up on The Take. This is 11 Alive Plus. Welcome back to The Take. Last month, an advisory panel with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommended that adults and children no longer receive flu vaccines containing thimerosal. It's a preservative that was mostly phased out of vaccines about 25 years ago, but it's still used in a small percentage of multi-dose vials to prevent contamination. Joining us from Denver, Dr. Pyle Coley, a cardiologist and medical director of Cherry Creek Heart. Thanks for being on the show, and we'll have to get the correct pronunciation from the expert, from the doctor here.
Thimerosal, Cheryl.
Thimerosal, okay, good to know. So let's start with this from your perspective. Is this a science-based move, or is this more political?
You know, it's funny that the spotlight has been turned onto thimerosal because it's been around since the 1930s. So really this is not driven by science because there is no new science about this compound. It's a preservative that we use in vaccines, multi-dose vaccines, to help them, prevent bacterial and fungal contamination. So this has largely been driven by really a focus from the current administration on trying to avoid mercury because it is a mercury-based product. And so there's no new science to suggest why we're doing this now. But it's interesting because it's come up now in so many discussions.
Yeah, we see so many online forums, so much on social media. You mentioned it's a mercury-derived preservative. How would you respond, or maybe assure parents who hear the word mercury and immediately think something negative, maybe danger, even autism risk?
Yeah, this is my concern, actually, now that we're talking about it, is that people are going to fuel their vaccine hesitancy, which we know has already become such a big problem following the COVID pandemic. And so the way to think about it is to really understand what type of mercury. So the mercury that's found in fish that accumulates in tissues in our body, like the brain, and has potentially been linked to autism is methyl mercury. This product has a breakdown called ethyl mercury, so a different type of mercury that doesn't accumulate in the body. Now, in animal studies, ethyl mercury, which is what thimerosal contains, has been linked to some oxidative stress, but this has not shown to be true in humans. So the first thing is it's different types of mercury. The second thing is, as you mentioned, the product has been phased out for over 25 years, and yet we've seen an increase in autism, not a decrease. So if it was linked to autism, one might expect to see a decrease. So the analogy that I like to use is like, regular alcohol versus rubbing alcohol. They both have the word alcohol in them, but certainly one is safe to drink and the other isn't.
That's a great example. And this conversation is why it's so important to hear from a medical professional, to go a little deeper than maybe a 15-second video online, because there's a lot of nuances that help us understand the scientific issue and make those decisions for our families. Just to reiterate, is there any legitimate health reason today to avoid thimerosal in small number of vaccines that still contain it?
So for the majority of Americans, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and the FDA, and the American Academy of Pediatrics have unanimously said there's absolutely no reason to avoid thimerosal. Get the vaccine, get yourself, your children, your family members protected. Now, there are three sort of subgroups that may want to think about avoiding it. One is somebody who has a true allergy to thimerosal, which is very rare. If you're under 6 months of age, an infant under 6 months, that population is not well studied, so that's a group to avoid, and usually they don't get vaccines that have that. And finally, pregnant women, again, out of an abundance of caution, not because there's any scientific evidence linking this to autism or any other adverse outcomes.
All right, we are on the verge of back to school. Fall made me think of flu season. Could limiting these multi-dose vaccines impact how many flu shots could be available?
Really, it can. And this is my biggest worry as a physician, is that what are we doing by cutting off our supply chain? After the pandemic, we've already had supply chain issues. And we know that multi-dose vials are easier to make, they're easier to ship, easier to store, easier to administer, especially in low-income areas. So by cutting it out altogether, we may really choke the vaccine supply in some of those socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods, which means less flu shots, which means more infection, more adverse outcomes.
All right, these decisions we make not only impact ourselves and our households, but the communities around us. So we really appreciate your insight. Dr. Piaccoli, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
All right, hot day ahead. Look at that. Not a cloud in the sky as we look over DeKalb County. That's about as picture perfect as it can be. If you're sitting inside looking out in the cool temperatures, we have another hot one today. Chesley was letting me know this morning to expect a high of 95, but with that humidity, the feels like temperature is going to be pushing triple digits. We've got a pretty dry week ahead, and we're going to be sticking through in the 90s. It is a troubling twist hitting families right now. Scammers using artificial intelligence and stolen identities to pose as students and then drain millions of dollars from federal financial aid. With more on this now, Maurice Simpkins, CEO of AM Simpkins & Associates, a software company based in Gwinnett County. Good to have you on the show, Maurice. Thanks for the time.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
All right, let's talk about these fake college students. They call them, ghost students, and how real, though, that threat is.
It is a very real threat. Not only, the fact of ghost students, but the fact of those ghost students are stealing real folks' money, real taxpayers' money, and they're causing a lot of malicious activity within the operations of higher education currently.
All right, I know you're kind of studying how they're getting into the system here. So what would you say is the typical playbook for these fraudsters? And are certain types of colleges or students maybe more vulnerable to these scams?
Yes, I would say the playbook is very wide and very open. It has been a lot of foreign actors of what we've been able to track from that side. They're going after what we in the industry call low-hanging fruit. And so institutions that have open admissions, which is pretty much the community college infrastructure in America, the lifeblood of a lot of our education, the open admissions infrastructure there, a lot of the fraudsters are just taking the opportunity to do their A/B testing and get through those potential walls. And once they're getting in and they've perfected that fake identity or that stolen identity, then they're moving on to attacking online schools and even taking classes, matriculating through a community college to now take that transcript along with their faked identity to try to go to a larger state-supported institution or four-year school.
Wow, that's so interesting. It made me think as you're talking, Maurice, that maybe anybody who knows someone at that community college level, or maybe dual enrollment students, a really important conversation maybe for a parent to have with one of those kids. What warning signs maybe should students or families be looking for in their FAFSA account, the email, even maybe a credit report?
I would say everything could be potentially suspicious. If you get an email that does not look 100% correct, these days the scammers using AI, using some of the tools available to them are making it look very, very, very legit. And so it's harder for parents, even the students, to even try to assimilate what's good or bad. Many of the students are up, more known with the technology,
Sure.
but they're not able to understand that at times they're being victimized. And when you have a student who's trying to get into an institution and they may get a letter from a fake fraudster or someone saying, hey, you've been accepted, click here to enter your information, click here to, do some payments and things of that sort. These fraudsters are operating in a manner with which we know that they're after the funds, and they're not stopping in any manner, whether it's funds from the parent or the student through fraudulent application infrastructures, or funds through the institutions or in the government, because they're stealing, financial aid funds that should be distributed to real students.
Yeah, students that need that help as college is so expensive. And with technology, it's harder and harder to really see sometimes the red flags within those phishing or scam emails. I'm curious, is there a way for a family to be a little more proactive before they see something they think could be wrong? Could they double check if an application's may already been filed in their name without their knowledge?
In most cases, all the institutions that we work with, they have some sort of duplicate checking infrastructure. And so if you were able to go out and do an application at an institution, something would be triggered to say, we've gotten an application from you before, and you may be notified of that, or they may send you toward their portal infrastructure to say, okay, you've logged in here before, continue logging in. And that may be something that is strange to you. What we're even seeing more of is, regular citizens, in America, who are now getting letters from collections companies that say, hey, you owe money to this community college in Iowa or in Kentucky or in Georgia. And in many cases, some of these folks have never entered these states or heard of these schools. And so the threat is on both sides very, very serious.
Well, it's so frustrating because the process on its own with all the paperwork is overwhelming sometimes, but then you also have to be aware of these ghosts that want to bring you in and take advantage of you. So thanks so much. Really important information, Maurice. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right,
Thank you.
have a good one. Plenty more in store for you coming up on The Take. This is 11Alive Plus. Are tariffs about to hit your wallet harder than expected? CNN's Mirabelle Hebert joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Cheryl.
All right, you've got some fresh numbers just came in which show that potential impact to our pocketbook. What's it showing you?
Okay, inflation picked up in June, Cheryl. The Consumer Price Index showed an annual inflation rate of 2.7%. And prices last month ticked up 0.3% from May. That's according to the Labor Department. Both numbers right in line with what economists were forecasting. Economists will be breaking down the numbers and looking at categories like apparel, like electronics, autos, and furniture. Those are among the categories that will offer a look at the impact of tariffs on consumer prices. And so far, it appears the June CPI report was mixed on just how much impact tariffs had on prices. For example, vehicle prices fell in the month, with prices on new vehicles down 0.3%. But apparel prices, which can be sensitive to tariffs, were up 0.4%. Cheryl, both Wall Street and the White House tracking these numbers. Remember, President Trump has continually pressured the Fed to lower its key interest rate. That next meeting is July 29th.
Yeah, so interesting because since we started talking about tariffs, it was always this wait and see, and we're starting to see some movement. So that'll be interesting how it keeps unfolding. Let's talk about home prices dropping in some surprising places. What does it mean for us?
Okay, as always, it's all about location when it comes to real estate. And in this case, it really depends on what market you're in, Cheryl. But there are signs that the overall housing market's cooling off. Nearly a third of the 100 largest housing markets in the U.S. are now showing annual declines in prices. This is according to a report. It comes from ICE Mortgage Technology. It found annual price declines of at least a full percentage point in those markets. And overall, prices rose just 1.3% annually. It was the slowest rate in 2 years. And it comes as inventory decreases and demand slows due to high mortgage rates and overinflated home prices. Now, regionally, prices are still seeing big gains in the Northeast and Midwest, but they are softening in the South and the West, Cheryl.
Interesting. So softening for us here in Metro Atlanta, and where you live, really compounding where you work, and some changes on that front, because it sounds like a major company just pulled the plug on remote flexibility.
Starbucks wants its white-collar workers in the office more. The company is requiring its corporate staff to come into the office a minimum of 4 days a week. So that's up from the present requirement of 3 days a week. The 4-day requirement starts in Starbucks' new fiscal year in October. Also, new in-office requirements, some corporate workers presently working remotely will have to relocate to Seattle or Toronto within 12 months. Now, for Starbucks workers who don't want to comply, Cheryl, with these new requirements, the chain is offering a one-time voluntary exit program, which includes a cash payment.
Interesting. I guess my first question is how other big corporations might follow suit, so we will have to see what happens next on that front. Movie night, let's talk about something that got cheaper, because it seems like very few things are getting cheaper in our lives, but movie night getting cheaper if you know which days to go.
Okay, you got to go Tuesdays and Wednesdays. AMC slash those ticket prices. You're going to have to be a member of the chain's AMC Stub Awards program to get the discount. But you also get, in addition to the half price admission, Cheryl, you're going to get a discount on AMC small popcorn and drink combo. The midweek discounts come as the theater chains look for ways to compete with streaming, attract consumers on traditionally slow movie-going days. And some recent summer blockbusters have given people reasons to get out of the theaters. Recent hits have lifted the summer box office 16% compared to the same time last year, according to ComScore. Just last weekend, we had a big opening for Superman, which took in more than $122 million in its debut weekend. Cheryl, we can use a deal at movies, especially families. Between the tickets and the popcorn, maybe I should go to Universal or Disney.
You are speaking my language. As a mother of 4, I'm like, what rerun could we watch for free? So Tuesday's the day. That means today's the day, and it's hot here in Atlanta, so get a little free AC too. Maribel, thanks so much for the time.
You got it.
We have a lot more coming up for you. You are watching The Take on 11Alive Plus. Tonight is the night you're looking at Truist Park, where we are getting closer to that first pitch for Major League Baseball's best, taking the diamond to shine the light on the 95th annual All-Star Game in our city. It's expected to be a packed house at Truist Park. Millions will be watching tonight on television. This makes for a primetime event, which will see an extra dose of security. Joining us is Marcus Snipe. Currently, he serves as the head of security and safety for our parent company, Tegna. Previously, he served as a U.S. Secret Service agent in charge, also supervised security at the NBA. Welcome to The Take.
Thanks, Cheryl. Happy to be here.
Well, take us inside what it takes to make an event like baseball's All-Star Game as secure as possible.
Well, it actually starts, more than a year out, months out. Then you pretty much chisel down to weeks and days. The preparation is extensive, involves a lot of people, involves a lot of different police jurisdictions. Major League Baseball, just like the NBA, the NFL, NHL, any major sports organization or league, pretty much we mirror each other when it comes to security preparations. A big event like the All-Star Game, you tend to enhance the security a little more. You don't want to take away from the fan experience. You want people to be able to enjoy the game. You want security to be there. You want to be like paint on the wall. You walk into a room, oh, this is a nice blue paint, but then after a while, you forget it's there, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the methodology for security when it comes to a big event. Yeah, you enhance it. You make it safe. You extend your perimeters. You add some technology. You add some more physical barricades. enhance your surveillance capabilities, but you want to make that event a nice event, especially a Major League Baseball All-Star game, where it's a family event. It's a good event for the city. So you want security to be the main focus.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy. It's all around you, but you don't know it's there. That would be the ideal scenario, which is why, as we've had press conferences, no one's talking too many specifics because you can't give away the very thing that would protect the people there. I'm so curious, you've done it all. You protected presidents, NBA finals. How does an all-star game stack up in terms of complexity and the risk?
They're different. Obviously, each event has its unique, its uniqueness. Your Major League Baseball All-Star game, it's extensive. You have thousands of people attending this event. You have athletes attending this event. You have entertainers, so on and so forth. You have a presidential speech or a presidential rally. It's pretty much the same thing. You have a president, you have the general public, you have, a lot of people coming in to one space that you need to secure. It's not that much different from what's going to happen tonight in Atlanta. So when it comes to security, you realize that you have to have a plan. Not just to secure people, but hey, you have to have a plan in the event something happens. To use another analogy, the security at an all-star game, at a presidential event, what have you, the security team, they're like, to use a baseball analogy, like, you're a shortstop. Right? You have to know what you're going to do with the ball before it gets to you. Hey, is it 2 hours? Are we going to go to first?
Sure.
It's the same way in security. What if this happens? If this happens, what are we going to do? Are we going to, evacuate people? If it's a hazmat issue, how are we going to handle that? If it's a gunman, how are you going to deal with that? If someone gets sick or ill,
it's like running every scenario, hoping you never have to use them, right?
Absolutely. Someone runs on the field. How are you going to deal with that?
Sure.
So all of that's planned out ahead of time and during the security advance process.
Yeah.
And it never ends.
Until
the event is over.
Before we let you go, I'm just thinking about Truist Park and the Battery, the very things that our community loves about this area because it's open. There are so many great restaurants and stores, and the ballpark's beautiful. It's wide open, might be the very thing that would be most challenging. Talk about the approach to maybe perimeter security when we're talking about these wide open spaces, people in and out for days.
Yeah, and it's relatively simple. You form an outer perimeter of security, right? Which is, hey, not so robust, but it's a perimeter of security. And then you have the middle perimeter, right? Which is, the parking area or where people ingress or people are walking or people are gathering, tailgating, that kind of thing, right? And then you have the inner perimeter, which is basically inside the actual event, inside the stadium, inside Truist Park. So you break down that security perimeter, you enhance it. You have magnetometers. You put increased technology in certain places when it comes to the inner perimeter, and you use intelligence.
Yeah,
you monitor social media, so on and so forth.
That's a really good point. You hope that everybody goes in looking for a safe and smooth night. Marcus Snipe, we really appreciate the perspective. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
All right, you too. We've got more for you on the other side of the break. This is The Take on 11Alive Plus. Before we go, my final take. The All-Star Game tonight happens on a date that carries powerful symbolism. July 15th, 7:15, the number where Hank Aaron surpassed Babe Ruth on the all-time home run list. It happened right here in Atlanta, Fulton County Stadium at the time. Back then, the marker's still there on what now is part of the GSU campus. A city rooted in civil rights history. Aaron's journey meant more than baseball. He faced death threats with dignity, shattered records with grace, and then stayed to serve. He and his wife, Billy, poured their hearts into Atlanta's youth, raising millions for education, mentoring generations. So tonight, as the All-Stars light up, they do so right in the Metro, where Hank Aaron worked to inspire, and his courage and character continue.